You better lock that chastity belt on tight, boys, because today I got my hands on what could be the best gaming monitor ever created. That's right, this little channel will be the first one to have a full review on LG's brand new 27-inch OLED 240Hz HDR monitor, and unlike all other OLEDs on the market, not only is it a reasonable size, but it also has a decent pixel density as well. Then you throw in 240Hz and my ring is about to snap right off from all the blood flow. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the review. And first, of course, we have to quickly touch on all the specs, which according to LG, the 27GR95QE-B, my God, that's an awful name, is a 26.5-inch Gsync/Freesync HDR 1440p 240Hz 12-bit OLED monitor with a full screen brightness of 200 nits, a gray-to-gray response time of 0.03 milliseconds, a contrast ratio of 1,500,000 to 1, and the ability to display 1.07 billion colors. It also has two of what I believe are HDMI 2.1 40 gigabit ports, one Displayport 1.4 port, a headphone out, an SPDIF, two USB ports, and of course a stand with all the adjustment capabilities that you would expect. But uh-oh, sound the alarm, because what's this? An anti-glare low reflection surface treatment? Yep, you know what that means. LG just couldn't help themselves. They had to smear vegetable oil all over the screen and put a matte finish all over the display, which before we move on to the measurements, guys, let's talk about this real quick, because this is a $1,000 display. So it's definitely not cheap, but to be fair to LG, it's also, despite the finish, likely still the best overall gaming display on the market. But at $1,000, I do not expect to see a cheap matte finish that is typically found on budget displays and $80 office monitors. Now, I know this video will likely reach people outside of my subscriber base, so real quick before somebody types in the comments that they like a matte finish or asking what it even means, basically it's a coating that's placed over the display, which in theory helps block reflections by diffusing the light, but in reality, and this is why I hate it so much, not only is it not possible to block reflections, but by diffusing it all over the screen, it actually makes everything look worse by giving the display a sandy or oily look to it, which significantly cuts down on the vibrancy and clarity of the display. So it's a real shame that LG decided to put this cheap crap on the display, as they have access to a much better premium glossy polarizer used on their TVs. But despite this massive blow, this display is still an absolute banger that wipes the floor with almost every other display on the market, and let's take a look at the tests to see why. Now, first of all, we gotta touch on the color calibration, and guys, it's actually very good out of the box in the HDR mode. Now, in the SDR mode, unfortunately, it was a little bit off, though after calibration, you can get it to be pretty accurate. Now, in the HDR mode, I was actually very surprised. It's pretty dang good out of the box. So if you are going to be using this with HDR, you don't have to do a whole lot. Although if you go over to my Patreon, I will have my settings for SDR as well as SDR and HDR ICC profiles to fine tune it even further. But now let's go ahead and move on to the brightness, which if we take a look at the 10% window brightness, it does come in at a pretty respectable 689 nits, which puts it just behind the LG C1 and is just around the middle of the pack. But now if we move on to the HDR brightness in a 100% window, here we can see it does actually come in dead last, and I did notice that this is a fairly dim display when you're working on stuff like a full white spreadsheet, and it is even behind the LG C1 just ever so slightly. And honestly, I do think that's actually because it's color calibrated out of the box, which means you are going to lose out on a little bit of brightness since it's going to be a little less blue. So if you're someone who's going to be doing a lot of spreadsheet work, this might not be the right display for you. Although in SDR mode, I did notice it was around 200 nits. So yes, it can get a little bit brighter. But now moving on to some actual games, here in Battlefield 1, the peak HDR brightness that I saw out of this thing was 403 nits. So it is actually significant significantly behind the LG C1, and I definitely notice once again this is a little bit of a dimmer display, and it does come in closer to the bottom of the pile and gets absolutely destroyed by mini LED technology. As you can see, that Asus PG32 UQX comes in with an astounding 1414 nits. But guys, it's definitely not all bad, because although it might not be the best HDR display on the market, I mean, it's definitely not bad. It's an OLED, so you're going to get some fantastic blacks on there still. However, yes, it does get beat out by their TVs, but where it really shines is in their total system latency. As you can see here, that it smokes absolutely everything else, and this is to be expected because OLED display technology is already so fast, and LG makes some of the fastest displays on the market, especially when it comes to their OLED stuff. So it's no surprise that when you turn 120Hz all the way to 240Hz, this is definitely going to be one of the fastest gaming displays ever created, and it's definitely the fastest display that I have ever tested, and by quite some margin. Even other 240Hz displays are trailing it by quite a bit. And guys, if you are looking for a high refresh rate display for competitive gaming, this thing is so fast that I actually do believe it's going to beat out even some 360Hz displays. And with a 1440p resolution and the deep blacks that you get out of OLED, as well as some decent HDR performance, yeah, this is an absolute banger. And for competitive gaming, I don't see why you'd want any other display on the market right now, although I will say that there are going to be some other OLEDs coming out soon, so maybe my opinion will change. I'll be getting my hands on some other ones very soon. However, right now, from everything that I've taken a look at, this is definitely going to be the best competitive gaming display that you can possibly buy, again, that I've tested so far. And that is saying something, because I've tested quite a few displays, many more than I have on my charts. Now, overall, is it the best display that I've ever tried? I'm gonna say no. There's definitely some other options out there, like the Alienware QD OLED that has its own strengths and weaknesses, and then of course there's the LG C2 42-inch, and personally, after testing this display extensively, I am gonna be sticking with the LG C2 42-inch, at least for now, as I will be attending CES, and guys, I'm hearing some pretty crazy stuff about some upcoming displays there as well. But the reason why I'm gonna be sticking with the LG C2 is a couple of reasons. The first one is, yes, the LG C2 does have a glossy finish, and it is going to be more clear and far more vibrant than what you're going to get out of this display. Also, the LG C2, while it does have a similar, if not the exact same pixel density that we get on this display, since it's 42 inches 4K versus 27 inches 1440p, the LG C2 still just has far more pixels and gives you a far more detailed image, which I definitely appreciate, especially when it comes to doing actual editing. That 4K resolution is just kind of a must-have for me at this point. It is a little bit difficult for me to go back to 1440p for editing purposes. But again, I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses, and I think it's a really hard decision when choosing between these two displays. I think it's more of, do you want slightly brighter brights and more clarity and more vivid colors, or do you still want to have an OLED display with decent HDR but have the fastest gaming display that you can get? It's going to be a far better choice, again, than a lot of other gaming displays out there on the market. So again, very, very difficult choice. Overall, I give this a huge thumbs up, an awesome display as a whole. Hopefully in the future, LG can make some changes, such as moving it over to a glossy polarizer so that it looks far better. But as a whole, regardless, this is an amazing display, guys. But in any case, hopefully this helped you out with your future purchases. And if it did, be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and also comment below what monitor you're using. I highly appreciate all the support, guys, and I put a lot of time and money into this one, so hopefully you enjoyed it. And also, I want to give a big shout out to RuPro for sponsoring this video. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, RuPro has you covered with their RuPro 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes ranging from 3 to 165 feet, and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K at 60 FPS or 4K at 120 FPS HDR10 video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports eARC. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out RuPro on Amazon today.